It is now time for FOMO, and today we are looking at Intel versus the rest of the chip trade, as we are seeing Intel hang on to, less than 2% of a gain, but it's still something, with the rest of the semiconductor space selling off on this session, actually picking up in real time some of those losses. Here to discuss more of that divergence, I'd like to welcome in Caroline Woods, senior markets correspondent for the network. So walk us through, everything that's happening today. We're seeing weakness in like ASML, TSM, NVIDIA even, while Intel remains higher on the session, Caroline.
Hey there, Jenny. Yes, the tech sell-off is intensifying due in large part to this broad-based sell-off that we're seeing in chips based on a few headlines today. Just running through it, you had mentioned a few of the names, but NVIDIA is down about 6% today. AMD is down more than 8%. ASML off 12% despite better than expected earnings. Taiwan Semi, TSM, is also off pretty significantly, down about 7% ahead of earnings overnight. The list goes on. Broadcom, Qualcomm, Applied Materials, ARM, all sharply lower today. There are concerns about tighter trade restrictions from the Biden administration if companies continue granting China access to some of the U.S.'s more advanced technology or U.S.-made technology. This is according to Bloomberg. They're saying that Biden is considering using the most severe trade restrictions available if companies like ASML continue giving China access to the advanced semiconductor technology. So the U.S. has this foreign direct product rule, or FDPR, which allows the U.S. to put controls on foreign-made products if they're made up of American technology, even if it's just a small bit of American technology. So it can affect non-U.S. companies as well. And Bloomberg is reporting that the U.S. is presenting the idea to officials in Tokyo and The Hague as an increasingly likely outcome if the countries don't tighten their own China measures. So there's that. And then there's also concerns about Taiwan as well after some comments from former President Trump to Bloomberg Businessweek. He said that Taiwan should essentially pay the U.S. for defense. He said they take about 100% of our chip business. We're no different than an insurance company. Taiwan doesn't give us anything. So there are concerns that a Trump victory would cause some big supply chain disruptions, and of course worries about the U.S.'s commitment to defend Taiwan. So this is all just risk and speculation at this point, but it could have a big impact. Take a look at ASML. Almost half of their sales over the latest reporting period took place in China. So it just goes to show how much an ASML would be at risk if some of these took shape. However, there are a few names bucking the downtrend today. You mentioned Intel. Intel off earlier highs, but still up about 2% right now. Global Foundries, also another big winner today. Shares also off the highs, but up about 7.5% today. Obviously, with Intel, or both companies, there's the potential to benefit if the U.S. really increases trade restrictions. Intel specifically, obviously, Intel Foundry is sort of hopefully in terms of the U.S. the answer to TSMC, an alternative to TSMC. It's really widely regarded as the only domestic alternative. Both companies have been unloved this year. If you take a look, Global Foundry is still down about 3% year to date, despite today's nice uptick. Intel down more than 30% year to date. So they've been unloved, but they're bucking the downtrend today.
It does seem like one of those kind of situations where we have a story and we're applying the explanation. And clearly there was an impact when the Taiwan headline came out. You saw a little bit of a move lower in NVIDIA and TSM. I'm sure that you saw some movement when we got these headlines around restrictions. But this has also been, for the last week, the market's MO. The market has been rotating out of winners into underperforming parts of the market as it broadens out. So to me, this is also something that's like, it's an excuse to keep doing what the market's wanted to do for about a week now.
Yeah, it's certainly kind of adding fuel to the fire. I think the big question is the rotation that we had been seeing. Obviously, the Russell's lower today, Dow's still positive, but the rotation into small caps kind of stalling out today. But is it the beginning of something bigger, or is this just some profit taking on some of these big names after a huge run up through the rest of this, or in the first half of this year, up until basically the past 5 days? Because if you take a look, the Magnificent Seven all lower today as well. So not necessarily just impacting chips today. I do think it's also, and I should say, Jordan Klein over at Mizuho did have a note to clients saying, my personal take is not to freak out and start indiscriminately selling semis with reckless abandon. A pullback and risk-off trade into July earnings season is good in my view to lower expectations and very elevated and euphoric investor positioning sentiment in the semi sector. So, I think that's one perspective. Obviously, some have talked about this being a buying opportunity as well, finally getting into an area that's run up so much. But again, it is risk, and it is speculative at this point. But that's how stocks move, right?
I mean, absolutely. I totally agree. And I think when it comes to Intel, the wait and see story has been a little bit frustrating, honestly, because it's like we talk about these timelines and these various projects they have in the pipeline, but a lot of them are not out until 2026, 2027. I mean, these are years away. So is the street getting any sense of hope here? I mean, I know that today isn't indicative of its performance for the last several months because it's been disappointing, frankly, but do analysts still see some upside for this name that has been such the stark laggard of the group?
And Intel, I think that's when they'll be, the factories might be complete, but I don't think they're expected to be operational until 2027 or 2028. So, there's still a ways out. It's just also a value play likely at this point because it's been beaten down so much. I was just taking a look, the breakdown of analysts, no one's more bullish because of the action that we've been seeing today or some of these headlines. I mean, the majority of analysts still very much in the hold camp for Intel. There are 9 buys, 32 holds, and then 3 sells. Median price target is $35, which is actually right in line with where it's trading right now, a little bit lower than that. I also do think that it's important to note that there's this Financial Times story out about Intel as well. Doesn't seem to be impacting shares all that much. They're continuing to tick higher, although I did note that they're off their earlier highs. But Intel is apparently under scrutiny in Washington because it appears to be one of the most active foreign investors in AI and semiconductor startups in China. The Financial Times is saying that Intel Capital owns shares, that's the venture capital division, owns shares in 43 tech startups based in China, including 16 AI startups and then 15 in the semiconductor industry. And they're saying it's also invested in cloud services, EV, telecoms, virtual reality systems, and battery companies in China. So kind of just an interesting side note as it is benefiting or potentially benefiting from some restrictions with China, also investing in China, according to the Financial Times.
So the web in which that whole world operates, I do find so fascinating. So appreciate that added tidbit there, Caroline Woods. Appreciate all of the breakdown also on Intel today, senior markets correspondent for the networks.